Remember our seconds? Is everybody utilizing their seconds in a day fully? I can't say that I am all the time at all, but I realize that flying here instead of driving here gets a lot more work done on the plane. So if we go back to our 3,000 seconds, we'll just bring it full circle and remember, what are our students doing to spend those seconds in your classrooms? And I gave you a little bit of an assignment over the last month. Hopefully you came with at least some sort of an idea of where you want to go with this, because it's my goal that this evening, since we don't have additional people here to talk to you, at you, with you, that we can get some work time in and some one-on-one with me. But I did want to revisit the 8 essential elements, first and foremost, of project-based learning. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at these 8 essential elements through the lens of 2 additional projects. And as we watch the video on these 2 additional projects, what I'd like you to think about: do you see those 8 essential elements in there, or do you think that some of those 8 essentials are missing? And I will bring that diagram back up once the video is complete and we can go through the 8 essentials together. All right. This particular video that we're going to view comes to us from Boston, Massachusetts, and it is a school called Mission Hill. It's an inner city public school in Boston, and so if you are inclined at some point, you can take a look at the entire documentary series. They did a 12-part series of Mission Hill. If you just Google "a year at Mission Hill," you can see everything that they did. They show you the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is something that I really like about this documentary series, because they followed them through the entire year, and you can see kids screaming in the halls and upset about different things. But this particular video that we're going to watch, it's called "The World of Work." And what Mission Hill does is they do school-wide themes, and it's a K-8 building. And so they're going to walk you through how the older kids participated in their project as it related to the world of work, and then they're going to walk you through the younger kids and how they participated later on through this theme on the world of work. And we're going to relate it back to our 8 essential elements, keeping in mind, do we see these 8 essentials, or do we see things that are missing, and maybe some questions that we have on what they were doing. And now the song will be stuck in your head for the rest of the evening, right? Our 8 essential elements. We saw 2 very distinct projects here. So the older kids, the younger kids. I purposely chose something that was non-math and science related, because you heard an awful lot about math and science over the last 2 series. So I thought we would take more of an English language arts perspective on this one. So let's talk about them. We'll start with significant content, since it's one of our core components here. What do we see in either the older kids or the younger kids that you would see as part of the significant content for the curriculum?
Well, the writing, the older kids.
Okay, lots of writing.
Lots of writing that tied in with the community somehow. I don't know which one that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, they certainly had a distinct audience and purpose for the writing, which, if you look at the Common Core writing standards, I mean that's huge. Are we writing for an audience, for a purpose in mind? So that would be definitely part of that significant content.
It was collaborative discussion as well, and critical thinking, and what types of questions to ask the people in various careers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we're tying that significant content into those 21st century skills with the critical thinking piece.
It had to be voice and choice. They had to choose what career they wanted to research and who they wanted to interview.
Yeah, I want to be a snake handler. All right, you want to be a snake handler? We're going to find you someone. We'll give you some voice. We're going to give you some choice, not tell you that really that's a little bit out of the realm of possibility and what you will probably do. And did you see he was very calm when he lifted up the snake to move him away from his lap? But that's what the child wanted to do. The girl that wanted to be a ballerina, okay? How about the young man that wanted to be the mayor? Somebody wanted to be a communication specialist. So on the one hand, you have students that are choosing career options that are probably pretty viable for them. In other cases, they're dreaming a bit big, but let's give them that option too.
There's that art also, the art direction.
Yeah, for going back to that significant content for the older kids, I love that they're bringing in the art piece. I know that over the last 2 sessions, there was a big push with the STEM components. A lot of different schools are going from STEM to STEAM, where they're incorporating the arts into it. And so bringing that art component into this piece, I think, was really important as well.
We had an in-depth inquiry because just for the little kids, they got a chance to bake something, to go to the bakery. I'm pretty sure that drove more questions and more thoughts and more projects or what have you, and they got to actually bake something. And she probably tied in her math and her.
Yeah, she was talking about there's chemistry involved, there's math involved, all of these pieces that are involved in that significant content, but it's more than just at the end, here's our cookies. Well, how did we make these cookies? How did we make our bread? How does that, how does it work? How does it work? Have you, I know recently, because it's Christmas season, there are a lot of things that are going around on Facebook, and I saw the 10 different ways to make a chocolate chip cookie. And depending on the ingredient that you add to it, it'll change the look and the taste completely. Is it going to be a flat cookie? Is it going to be, is it going to be one that's more rounded? What's that one little ingredient that you're going to change? And it changes the whole chemistry of the baked good. So at that very young age, they're able to do that. And going out into the community and becoming apprentices with the bakers to learn that process was huge for them.
I may have missed this. What was the public audience for the little kids? Was it there?
So,
because it seemed as though their product was then sold back to them.
Mm-hmm. So it's a really good point that you bring up. Now, they had other kids that were coming in to buy it. So it's definitely, when we're talking about a public audience, it's lower scale public audience for them. They're little, we're selling it to
So those were like other classes.
Other classes that were coming in.
When you get this now, you get the opportunity to buy.
Right. So there were other classes that were coming in to buy from them, and it's a really good starting point for those little kids. And they had to, they had to do the math. They had to determine, you're buying this, 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 and this. Let me add it up. How much change do you get back? So it's a really good starting point for them. And can we then, level that up perhaps and say, now we want to open it up to other community members coming in to buy for the bake sale? They potentially could do that.
Could the public audience also be when they went out into the community?
That particular piece, when they're going out into the community, they're not really giving anything back, a final product that they're giving back, but they were using the community as experts to help them to better understand the significant content and to help with their 21st century skills with the communication and the collaboration piece of it.
So the public audience has to be them bringing the public into them.
So now whatever our final product is that goes out. As it goes out. And, I know we heard a lot of different examples the last time that I was here, and they were not examples that I screened beforehand. They were, I heard them for the first time when you heard them for the first time. And that was the one key thing that I felt that most of them were missing, was that audience piece, that they could have just gone that step further with the audience. And that's the one that's typically left out because teachers feel like, I don't know that I have time to do this piece. Or this is the piece. It is. This is the piece that becomes very labor intensive oftentimes. And so one of the ways around that is to, if you have older kids, allow the older kids to do the legwork first and foremost. Let them do the legwork instead of putting it on your shoulders. I don't necessarily always say who the public audience is going to be. You figure out who that public audience is going to be. That's part of the process. That's part of your assessment on this, is finding that public audience. You can certainly come to me and have help with that, but I don't necessarily have to do all of it.
So if you created a project, say you created a project amongst your team, and the end result, you guys are gonna have like some type of night, like a parent night or something where the community comes in, that will fall under public audience, right?
Absolutely, it can. Now, let me just give you a little bit of a caution for that. First and foremost, that speaks greatly to the labor-intensive, falls on my shoulders to plan that big thing, right? I never did a big exposition because I live 17 miles from my district. I don't want to drive home and then drive back. I don't want to have to worry about the invitations. I don't have to worry about who's showing up, who's not showing up. And for the most part, I felt like mostly parents were just going to come. And so parents kind of pat the kids on the back and great job. So I wanted something a little bit more authentic than that and less labor intensive on my part outside of school hours. So I never actually did some sort of big exposition. We saw in that example last time where they did do that big exposition where they invited community members in. You are certainly more than welcome to try something like that. It just was not something that I really entertained simply because I felt like it was too much for me.
Our district, we do have some showcases similar to this. It's not the teachers that are, organizing it, but we're going with our students and representing them, and then, they're members of the community that are going around, but somebody else plans that.
Right. Other pieces that you saw on here. How about the critique and feedback?
I think that and with the older kids, that was all part and parcel to the process of writing whatever they were coming up with. With the college kids coming in, we heard about the young lady who was presenting her student's book. So I think that as every step of the writing process was done for those kids, they got a lot of critique and feedback so that they could edit appropriately. And then ultimately, whenever something goes off to be published, how many times are you going to hear back from that when it's coming from a book publisher? So I think that was built in wonderfully.
And again, that's one of those pieces that sometimes gets left off because teachers say, I don't have time. I don't have time to build in that critique and that revision piece. So I think it's a great opportunity. And they really highlighted the fact that we're not only inviting the individuals in to give the feedback, but we're also making those connections with our students for the whole college component, almost as if they're having a mentor to say, this is what it's like to go to college, and let me be a good role model in your life, albeit maybe only for a few weeks, but have that connection with you to help you start to think about that process, even though you're only in the 8th grade. And so that critique and feedback, you're absolutely right, Michael, that it has to be built into the process of what the teachers are doing.
I think part of the problem, at least in my thinking, part of the problem with the way that was done, Tuesdays and Thursdays, for however long it was for the college kids to come in and do that with the 8th graders, that takes one writing piece and spreads it out over such a long time when, correct me if I'm wrong, in ELA you've got how many products? 8 products to produce in a year. And I think that is by design. If we were to think of something like that, we would have to cram it all in or something like that.
And you could condense, or the other option is, and I will tell you I was very skeptical about trying this. I was really worried about doing it, and I thought it was going to blow up in my face, but it actually worked out pretty well. I did 2 simultaneous projects at once. And so it was something that we had collaborated on with other schools in the country. And because of testing schedules, because of spring break schedules, we spaced a project out that would probably have only taken about 10 days to do in class. We did it over the course of 12 weeks. And we spent 1 day a week on that project. And they just knew every Monday was this particular project day. And they were very easygoing with it. they flowed right into from one project to the next, and it was by the design of the schedule because of the other schools with whom we were working. And it worked out well. So instead of saying, okay, I need more time in between, and now I'm going to make a project longer in terms of the number of days that I spend on it, it was longer over the period of weeks, but it was the same number of days that I would have spent if I had actually done it in that 2-week school time period. Any other pieces here that you want to mention? That need to know piece.
Something to happen before you, so let's say the smaller kids, I'm guessing the need to know would have been teacher led before they actually went out into the community. What do you want to ask the baker? What do we want to observe when we go in the bakery?
So keep in mind, so that need to know is to say, all right, what are we going to do to get you excited and involved in this? Not necessarily what do we need to know in order to be able to do it. So it's kind of that launching point. So she took them on the field trip out into the community, just on a walk. And let's see, what do we do in the community as different jobs, world of work. And so as they took that walk, and then the kids were able to decide what particular job that they wanted to hone in on. Obviously, as little kids, baking sounds like a really good idea. For the older kids, again, a little bit labor intensive for those teachers to make some of the contacts to the individuals to have them connect with the kids, but bringing those individuals in, let you hold the snake, hold the alligator, that's now this becomes real, this becomes tangible to me, and that launching point.
So that was one time that they all came together kind of to launch the project.
Right.
And then the professor who let his class come, that was the support for the project.
That's going to be support, the critique and feedback throughout. And especially at the elementary level, it's really good to do multiple launching points because we might forget sometimes.
Special ed too.
Remind me why we're doing this again. So let's have another official launching point. Let's re-engage, re-energize, re-remind. And you might want to every couple of days do something little with them. That doesn't mean that it has to be big. We go on this walking tour of the city again. No, it could be something much smaller. It could be, maybe a story that they would have read to them about a particular career or profession, a children's story about that. And that could be kind of that re-engagement that, oh yeah, this is why we need to know this piece.
So it's like the hook.
It's the hook, yes. I did not come up with this terminology, but I will tell you that this is the one phrase that I have fought strongly for 5 years with my buddies in the back room at BIE to say that I think it's kind of a confusing term. But it is. It's like the hook. That's a really good, concise way to put it. All right. So remember, we're thinking about designing a project experience that empowers our students. So I wanted to just go through 2 or 3 slides here to kind of make some distinguishing factors. And then we're going to build in some work time this evening, and the first work time will be a little bit shorter just to get some initial ideas down in case you didn't come with some, and then a little bit later on this evening we'll spend some more time on it. I just wanted to really delineate between these two, and certainly this is the column where we want to be in that more authentic piece. And what we find is a lot of times we get these assigned projects versus these projects that really are real world and kind of evolve through the inquiry process. So you have to be very careful. Maybe some of the examples that we heard kind of bordered on both of these from the SEAMS group. But if we are in this assigned challenge column, there's nothing wrong with doing that in the classroom. And oftentimes a lot of this can be scaffolds for something larger. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about scaffolding in just a bit. But what often happens is you get a lot of replication from the students and everything really looks the same. There was a really great blog post that I saw the other day. It was called Craftivities, where elementary kids were doing a certain craft in class, right, as a project, but they all looked the exact same way. So first we glue this on, and next we paste that on, and then we cut this off, and it's all about the replication. If we are asking for students to be more innovative, that's where we come up with that authentic challenge. Moving beyond just something in the classroom, keeping in mind that the example that we just saw where the kids were selling to other classmates in other grades or in other classes is certainly a lower level, but it's moving beyond just their peers in the classes. When I'm talking about this focus on audience assessment, how many of you can name the kids in your classes that they only care about their grade? Yeah. And how many of you can name the kids that they care nothing about the grades and they really don't do anything, right? When it gets to this piece and that more authentic one where we're focused on the audience assessment, those kids that are really concerned about their grades because of what the teacher's giving, they quit asking me about their grades. They just wanted to talk about what the audience said. And Mrs. Lauer, can you believe, and can you believe, and can you believe, and this happened, and he said that, and they said that. And those kids that never really cared about their grades, all of a sudden they were doing it for someone other than me. So now it meant more to them because they had to impress these individuals that were the actual audience piece. And I wrote a blog post earlier on in the summer called The Top 10 Ways to Fake an Authentic Classroom. And there are just a couple of points that I wanted to bring out here. And if you can't sleep tonight, you can feel free to read this. It's not too long. It's probably only about 500 words. But a few of these that I wanted to bring out were these things. So this whole requiring teamwork piece, a lot of people hear projects and they say, okay, well, we have to do collaboration in projects. And well, yeah, we want to teach our kids how to collaborate, but do you have to be on a team in order to collaborate? Can you collaborate in other ways? Did we see those kids, the older kids in this example, were they working specifically on a team to write one piece? No. But they were collaborating with the people that they interviewed. They were collaborating with the college students. And then they all had to collaborate together to produce one final work. But they all individually did that assignment, right? We all have to write it for this project. So that requiring teamwork, if you require teamwork, sometimes it becomes forced. Sometimes students are like, yeah, forget it. I want to be that loner. I don't want to do it. One person ends up doing all the work, right? So you have to be really careful on that requiring teamwork. I require collaboration. And sometimes it might come in the form of a team, but not always. I don't want to team them out. I don't want to personally work in a team all the time, right? And we've all been in situations where we've worked in teams and we've felt the brunt of the work. Or maybe we felt like someone in the team was kind of pushing their ideas on us, and we didn't want that. So don't feel like you always have to require teamwork. Another piece that I wanted to really bring up is this PSA piece. And again, you can read more in detail about these, but with the public service announcement, I have a lot of teachers that they'll say, okay, I want to do this project, and the end product is they're going to do a public service announcement. All right, well, by definition, a public service announcement is 30-second spot, right? In a 30-second spot, how much can I assess about the understanding of the significant content? It becomes very difficult for me to assess unless I am teaching, say, a media lit class or something like that, where it's in my curriculum that they need to be able to do a public service announcement. So public service announcements oftentimes are just scratching the surface with content, And so public service announcements, my ears perk up whenever a teacher says, well, I'm going to have them do a public service announcement. And I always ask, well, how are you going to be able to assess the content and their understanding of the content? The other piece with the PSA, and I almost said PSSA because that's the state test that we have in Pennsylvania. The other problem that I have with it is this. Oftentimes, what will happen is I just want to bring about awareness. Well, I can bring about as much awareness as I want, but does that really impact any kind of change? Or does that propose a solution for change? And I read a really great article back in, I believe it was October. I don't think very many people know that October is not only Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but it's also Awareness Month for children with childhood cancer. And it was written by a parent, and the parent in this article, her child had passed away a few years prior, and she said, basically, awareness is a BS word. She said, awareness, 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 it doesn't change anything. It doesn't help to get the pharmaceutical companies to invest more money into the research to eradicate childhood cancer because it's not a big moneymaker. And they don't invest in it because it's not a big moneymaker. So we talk about awareness, but awareness does nothing to actually solve the problem. And it was an article that really hit home with me when she said that, because she's right. So if we're just saying, let me tell you this, be more aware of this, it doesn't really change the problem. Okay, I know it's happening, but what am I actually going to do about it? And then the final one that I really wanted to talk about in detail was the documentary piece, a video documentary. I can look back on a lot of projects that I did over the years, and if I want to be real truthful about it, they were just research papers in disguise. I could have had the students do the exact same thing in a 5 to 7 page research paper, and they would have given me the exact same information. And so when I look back on those things, all they were doing really was regurgitating information that is at those lowest levels of Bloom's taxonomy. They weren't doing anything new with the information. They weren't answering really any questions. And now, do students need to know how to do research? Absolutely. But then what are they doing with that research to change and to manipulate and to produce something new? So when you are thinking about projects and final products, if we're just having them do something like a video documentary, are they just doing a fancy research paper? So you really have to ask yourself those questions. As I said, you can feel free to read at your leisure, reread, send me comments, tell me I need to add things. But those are just a couple of pieces that I wanted you to keep in mind. So for about the next 20 minutes, and it's just going to be a short little period, I want you to think about, okay, it's almost winter break here. We're going to have some time where we don't see our students. When they come back in January, you'll all be re-energized, right? Right? Yeah, come on, right? Okay, and you're going to want to jump full into project-based learning. And especially with your roughly 10 days off or so, all you're going to be doing is planning for school, right? Okay.
A lot.
No doubt.
I mean, that's the way of the world when we're teachers. So I thought I would get you to thinking about this. All right, so where are we going to go? What do we want to do? What specifically is included in your content? What power standards do you have that you want to hit? Because if we go too broad in scope with our standards, it might just, we might get overwhelmed with trying to design a project. Did I ever tell you I tried to design one project for a whole year? Yeah, it made sense in my head, but when I was trying to put it on paper, it just wasn't happening because I was trying to incorporate everything. So what are we including in our power standards for that? Can we make a relevant connection between our standards and our content to what is happening in the lives of our students, what's important to our students? How are those standards and the content used in the real world? Do you see any community links that you have here? What could those be? And then, are there any interdisciplinary components that you could embed in the project? We saw the example, obviously, with the little kids. At the elementary level, it seems to come very naturally to be able to embed lots of different disciplines together. By the time we get to middle school and high school, a little more difficult because we become subject-specific content specialists. But are there interdisciplinary components? They added and incorporated that art piece into the example that we just saw. I remember the meeting where they told all of us, all 132 teachers in our building, that we were placed on the uh-oh list because one of our subgroups did not meet AYP on our state test, and now we were all math teachers. And the hush fell over the room, right? And the eyes got this big and said, "What are you talking about?" And so teachers would do a math lesson every Monday, and the students said, "Well, why are you doing math?" Well, I just rolled it into my project, and they never were the wiser. It was just a required component because we're going to be doing this data analysis that goes with the project itself. So I was bringing in interdisciplinary components, but it was still just me as a social studies teacher doing this particular project. There were times when I was ready to branch out, and maybe at some point I'll show you one of those videos where it's me and an art teacher that we're working on a project together, or me and a math teacher, or me and a science teacher. So about 20 minutes to just kind of start thinking about these components. If you need to get up and go to the restroom too, now's probably a good time. But where do you think you might want to go with this? Just some ideas down on paper, or if you're saying, "Well, Dana, I'm fried from the day, from Monday," it could be that too. So we'll take about 20 minutes for this, then I'll talk to you about some scaffolding and some assessment pieces, and then we'll get into more detailed work time too to end things out this evening.